Tips For, and today we're going to be talking about money. In particular, the idea of luxury, the concept of luxury in cosmetics. And if money happens to be a trigger for you, either don't watch this video or make sure you grab your emotional support animal or your emotional support martini or your weighted blanket. I have had my emotional support pumpkin spice cookie and poured a fresh cup of coffee, and I'm ready to talk about it. So welcome. Now, this video idea came from one of my lovely viewers who, after watching my Chanel video, had commented that she wasn't inclined to buy any Chanel after last year's debacle with the Advent calendar. And for those of you who don't know, Chanel's Advent calendar last year was about $825, and a woman had unboxed it in social media, and there was a pretty immediate uproar because of all of the seemingly cheap items that were in the Advent calendar, little trinkets that Chanel had thought were interesting and fun. In fact, that was kind of their response was, well, they thought their customers would think it was just fun and light. And they kind of missed that mark because the large backlash that came via social media was pretty immediate and intense. And to me, this is the company's hasn't quite got the idea how things are now for their customers, for the customer and potential customer. Because it's a brave new world out there. Social media is changing everything. And what I wanted to do is to go back and unpack, I think, the three main ideas that I think Chanel is probably missing and is needing to try and wrap their head around in this new world of gaining customers and then keeping old customers happy. And so we're gonna talk about it. So pardon my French in any of this, but we want to talk about the concepts of the riche, the Nouveau riche, and the idea of inspirational or aspirational luxury. So when I went to look at this, now, so you know where I'm coming from. I come from a relatively economically poor background. Not as bad as it could be. I know that things have improved a lot for my dad's family, and I'm doing pretty well now. But after working in the luxury cosmetics and then fragrance, and just my never-ending interest in other groupings of people, I've kind of figured out that they're very definitive mindsets that come along with whatever your economic history is. And in order to think about if you're a company that is targeting certain types of customers and also wanting to improve their customer base, these are really important to think about. So when I started researching these ideas, when I was looking up the technical definition of riche, the first quote that came up with it was from Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who is an American writer and activist, women's rights activist for voting rights. And the quote was, "The impassable gulf that lies between riches and poverty." And so I thought that was very interesting that this is a women's rights activist, and I'm going to be talking about cosmetics, which doesn't seem to be at all, and yet I'm going to come and bring it around back to this Chanel Advent calendar. So if we stray far away, just trust me that I will land this plane. All right. So the definition of riche was abundant wealth. And I always think about Chris Rock, a joke that he did once about, talking about NBA ballers, professional athletes, and the idea that they were rich, yeah, but the people that signed their paychecks were wealthy. And I always think about that because I I think about that difference between having money and having lots of money. Or in this case, the idea of riche is that idea of old money, money that's been in your family for generations upon generations, where it completely has changed the way you think about things. Now, I don't mean in this to be starting that whole vilification of riches. We're not going to do that, because I know for a lot of people who've had lots of money, they've done massive service to everyone by creating endowments, creating libraries. There's a lovely, the Getty Museum here in LA is this beautiful place with a person who had loads of money, who ended up leaving, their whole art collection and things like that, so that everybody could now enjoy it. When I was young, growing up, I got to watch ballet and opera on PBS because of endowments for public television. So for me, we're not going to eat the rich here. It's not what we're about. But that idea of old money, generational money, who have never experienced poverty. And some of people try and make a state for their kids where it's like they're not given their money, or they're made to live at a certain means level. But in a way, it's just a kind of, not that it's not a good exercise, but there is some sort of feeling of a safety net when if you completely mess everything up, you're not going to starve to death, which not all of us have had. When I think of this group of the riche, I think sometimes about my partner. There's a joke that's not really a joke in his business. It says, who's your dad and how's he doing? That idea that the rich are a known quantity, know each other, and that it makes this inlay into places, paves a road for you that you wouldn't normally have. So when we think about cosmetics and people buying cosmetics who not their main concern, and maybe not even their third or fourth concern, is about the price of an object, that really changes how they see things, how they even think about things. Now, taking it from the Chanel Advent Calendar, if it's an $825 price point, if price is not the issue, what you're looking at is the Advent Calendar interesting, beautiful, fun, appropriate? And that $825 is not even going to be a blip. It's like, oh, Chanel has this lovely gift. Wouldn't this be fun to give my granddaughter, my preteen, and instead of just one nice bottle of Chance, I have this Chanel No. 5, which I prefer, and I'm going to gift it to her. And in that Advent calendar are going to be a whole bunch of fun little things that have the Chanel No. 5 logo on it. Some stickers, some bangles, things like that. And it's just going to be delightful and fun. And then she'll have her bottle of No. 5 from her grandmother or her mother, her whoever. So this idea of this gifting, that price point is not at all the issue. Now we come to the next step down, which is the Nouveau riche. Now this is recently acquired wealth. This is wealth that's been maybe in 1 or 2 generations. The term Nouveau riche is often used to be derogatory. We're talking about like ostentatiousness, lacking good taste, people who like to have some sort of physical manifestation of their wealth that people can see so they know that they're wealthy, and that idea of social climbing. But it's kind of a derogatory term to be Nouveau riche. But the idea behind that is there's some semblance of that idea of poverty being just at the next bad stock deal or the next, fortune going badly, that then you could lose it all and be in poverty. So there is some fear-based behind that idea of new money. And there is also a status issue. especially if you're younger, if you're in certain institutions, and you're new money, and not everybody has known your grandfather for 400 years, and he is not a building dedicated in his name on the university campus, that in somehow you're less than. Now for this, that idea of having the logos of things, the Chanel, the accoutrement of wealth, is super important. But there's also that notion of, it's money and we need to somehow maintain it. Now that doesn't mean that people that have had lots of generational wealth don't have those concerns. Obviously, I'm being very general, and you're always going to find all sorts of exceptions to any of these notions. But the idea that we need to be guarding this wealth may be something that the rich have, but in other cases it's just not really on the mind. Maybe for a person who has riches, their deep concern is, I need to make good decisions with my company because thousands of people's jobs depend on me. Whereas a regular person might be, my job depends on me and I'm needing to maintain that. The Nouveau riche fall in that middle section, where it's price is a concern, but it's worth it because of what you're going to gain from those items of interest, the accoutrement of wealth. And so then we come to inspirational and aspirational wealth. Now, I know here in America we have a sort of notion of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, the idea that anybody can make a fortune, and that's true in a very small sense. It's also true that you might win the lottery, but your odds are very low. But for us, the mindset is, well, somebody wins the lottery. It might as well be me. It could be me. I should definitely play the lottery because somebody's going to win. But we become very interested in that notion of wealth, that wealth is almost deified. And so, back in the day, because we started to get access to things, we wanted to see, y'all remember Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous? And then later on they made a song about Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, that's another one of the Eat the Rich sort of a thing. But then we have like MTV Cribs, and now we have, tours of homes, and we have vlogs of fabulous locations, and we have where you can rent an Airbnb that's fabulous, or you can have win a night at this 5-star hotel. And with inspirational or aspirational luxury, it's the idea that we are having a piece of luxury because it inspires us to a lifestyle that we don't have but that we aspire to. So it's either inspirational and it makes us be excited and to go out and do a side hustle or invest or do something, or it's aspirational. We just wish for it, like a nice dream, like winning the lottery. So the idea is that now we're very much watching those markers of wealth, those things, and we're watching with interest. And there's a point in which we believe that that's attainable, but we also have this other belief that worth should equal value. So your money, the amount of money that you pay for something, should equal its worth. So unfortunately, in some elements, it's more like art. Art is worth whatever people will pay for it. Art is whatever the market can handle. People can decide something is wonderful and pay, millions of dollars for it. And really, if we're looking about, okay, what is it worth? It's the price of a canvas, the price of paints, plus the intangible equals what we paid for it. And it's the intangible, that people are trying to figure out what it's worth. So in the case of the Chanel Advent Calendar, we were many of us were watching this unfold. And for some of us, if the question of, do I have $825 to waste? In the old days, you wouldn't even know that this was possible if you weren't in that social strata, because it wouldn't be in your view. You would be working hard, nose to the grindstone, to keep from starving. Or you'd be in that middle section where you're doing well, but there's no way you would have the money to do that, and so you're not hanging out in the circles where those things are sold or talked about. But now we have this view where we can see into this world and see this thing, and we might now have the question, do I have $825 to waste if this advent calendar is no good? Now, that's the first part. Do I have $825 of income that I could get an advent calendar for? So if I'm doing that math, if I'm figuring out how many hours do I have to work to be able to afford that, or how can I get this on a payment plan? Can I put it on a credit card? Is it worth it to me to be able to purchase that and then pay for it over time? Or is that not even a notion at all? I don't even have a safety net of income for 3 months in case something happens. I don't even have any months of safety income. In fact, I don't have money in case I get a flat tire and need to fix it. I've been in all of these places. I do have $825 if I wanted to spend it. I, could, finance all of it. And oh my God, I could not survive a catastrophe, at all. And so $825 is not even remotely a consideration. But I would like to watch somebody else, have $825 and just dream of the day that, I'm winning the lottery, or, publishing the whatever, or doing the thing, and I have that kind of money. Now we get into the idea of affordable luxury. There's a lot of cosmetics now that are in a price range that we technically could afford. We figured out I have to work an extra shift or two and I could afford that compact, that thing. And that's when we start calling that affordable luxury. The pain point of something that the cosmetics world has figured out. I can make a quad of eyeshadow and I can charge X for it and people will buy it. The people say, okay, I have this pain point. It's a certain amount that I'm willing to pay for whatever this luxury is. And then after that, the pain point is too much and I won't purchase it. So the cosmetics companies do that math. Are we selling enough? Are we selling to the right people that will buy, 12 quads that look almost the same just because? Excuse me. And so they're trying to figure out from a sales perspective, what's your pain point? Now back to the advent calendar. So the woman that opened it was, I feel like that idea of dismay, like here I have this thing and I've paid for it and, maybe not exactly what I was looking for, but the outrage on her behalf, people that were watching it thinking, had I paid this amount of money for these items, I would be so angry. I would feel so cheated. I would feel awful. Now, whether or not she felt that way, right at the beginning, may be a little unclear to some people. Also, the idea that, her math is not everybody's math, but everybody who is watching that, who is imagining themselves having taken that financial gamble and lost and gotten things they felt were not worth it, were extremely angry. And if you think about it, if you had made that gamble, if you had saved your pennies, if you had put it on a credit card and you were expecting a certain value for your money, that you were going to figure out what was worth it, if you're going to do that math, and you got those items, you would feel devastated and angry and upset. And the problem is, for your math, that would be completely understandable. Now, in Chanel's defense, for their calendar, they did have where you could look and see what was in the calendar ahead of time. Not all companies do that. They just kind of like, it's a surprise. But Chanel did have that available, but a lot of people don't like to know what's in their surprise box because they want to be surprised. That part of the value of an advent calendar or a surprise box or something, a mystery box, is the mystery. And then you can either be overjoyed or dismayed depending on the mystery, and then go on. But this was a really high price point, and people who were watching were really emotionally investing their own things in this woman's experience, and then letting Chanel know in no uncertain terms that this was a problem. Now, in some ways, they do have something to learn about this. This idea of affordable luxury now for a new target audience. They are moving into Ulta. They are becoming more acceptable as a regular purchase. People are not seeing a pain point quite as much for a $50, $60 quad as they used to. People have gotten used to really expensive makeup and seeing really expensive makeup and wanting really expensive makeup and buying really expensive makeup. And then after a while, we start to not think of it as really expensive makeup. You know, we're like, well, that's not much, you know, and Tom Ford, that's so expensive, but you know, maybe it's just the fabulousness we need. And so we shift our scale of what really expensive luxury makeup is. And so that shifts the pain point for buyers. And then it shifts the, what can I charge for my makeup for luxury makeup items. Some of the luxury makeup you're never going to hear about because it is so far above your pain point that you're never going to hear about it. It's going to be brands you don't recognize because they don't target certain audiences, they don't sell in certain locations, and they really do keep that element of we're only for the very, very few. But I would say, in most of the cases, the companies that are working on trying to thread that needle between, we have this fantastic, this bourgeoisie, as it were, sort of ethos, but we're trying to continue widening our target audience because that's growth. That's financial growth. That's, we're not going to die. So we're going to do that. We're going to widen that audience. So we're going to try and thread the needle between keeping that idea of luxury, that idea of fantastic, beautiful, highly desired, and yet not everybody can have it. You know, that sounds fantastic. And by that I mean it sounds great, but fantasy. But that's the concept behind luxury. Sometimes it is about quality. Other times it's not. I remember my absolute indignation when I picked up this designer shirt. And there are levels of designers also. This was the kind of mid-tier designer label. The fabric was awful, was not quality, and the seams, I don't know if you, the way it was put together, you would say the seamstress was not good. Whoever had put together the garment was not good, and I could see where it was already failing. Like, certain levels of it were already, you know, the seams, you know, beginning to stretch. And I was just kind of appalled at the price versus quality. And yet I know I was seeing it through my own personal lens of worth it. To me, the fact that it had little buttons on it that had the designer's logo could not make up for the fact of the utter disregard for the quality of the fabric and the garment and the construction. But that was my point, where I was seeing this from. And it's not to say that things that are designer can't be exceptional quality, exceptional materials. and not such a price that it's completely out of reach of a mortal man or woman in this case. But it's that idea of that we're always seeing through this gaze, and it's the desire, we're wanting whatever it is that we're inferring from that luxury. We're wanting that in our lives. But so companies like Chanel, for an advent calendar, are going to need to think about the fact that they are being watched, first of all, by all different levels of socioeconomic people, buyers, potential buyers, and non-buyers alike. They are being watched and judged by everyone through each one of those groups, different gazes, and different expectations. But bad publicity, sometimes any publicity is good publicity, but other times, that whole desire to bring the rich down can really get flamed when you start having these sorts of advent calendar things happening. So from a design perspective, you have this fun advent calendar, you think you're putting in fun things. And you may need to rethink that if you are looking through a lens of, I still would like to set the price point at $825, or I'm going to be making a smaller edition for a different pain point of consumer. And what am I going to do that's going to be satisfying to that group, that's not going to make them feel cheated? But enjoy the thing that an advent calendar is supposed to be, which is fun, playful, inviting, and in the end makes you feel good about paying whatever price you paid for it. Now with Chanel, because like I said, they're entering into Ulta, where anybody can walk into a counter and buy a product. For a long time, they traded on this notion of exclusivity, designer, and that whole idea of luxury as opposed to affordable luxury. And so in order to attract new consumers, they're going to need to do on the cosmetic side some of what they've done on the fragrance side, make different ages that they're targeting, make different price points that they're targeting, while still trying to maintain that feeling of luxury, that feeling of excellence, that people are looking for in luxury cosmetics at luxury prices, that the je ne sais quoi, again, excuse the French, that something, that when we're doing the math, it's the price of a canvas, price of a paint set, plus this inexplicable thing. And so this is just something to think about when we're thinking about what do we expect and demand, in fact, from our luxury brands. What is it that's our own particular makeup that's making us think about luxury in a specific way? And does it matter if we as a consumer are not going to buy a luxury brand to the luxury brand? Are they in a place where that no longer matters? Or are they, as I would argue, needing to think more deeply about where people are coming from in order to survive and thrive as a luxury cosmetics business, where it's not a necessity? Nobody needs an eyeshadow, but still, you got to keep your business afloat. You got to keep the lights on. So what is the math for a business coming into this, going, how am I going to be attracting and keeping these new customers, this new brand of people that we're going to be luring, if you will, into the luxury cosmetics? So I feel like this is something to talk about. We can definitely talk about this. Before I leave you today, I want to tell you, a lot of people want to know why the luxury brands of eyeshadows in the quads keep putting in the little foam applicators. And I'm gonna explain this to my understanding. First, these were conceptualized in a time where a woman would have, and it would be a woman, that would be the target audience, no matter who used it, but would have their eyeshadow that they could put in a handbag, They would want to refresh it. They would not be having brushes. And they would also, it would not be the idea that you should have your makeup last all day. It would be like you were going into the powder room and you were going to tidy up things. And the idea that you were not going to put your fingers in your cosmetics. Now we're all, terribly gauche and we just dig our fingers into it. But the thing about a foam applicator is it has the texture on it that in some ways mimics the fingerprints and the ribbing of skin. And so you get much of the same type of application with that foam applicator that you do with a finger, but you don't have to put your fingers in your cosmetics. Now the brand is in some ways probably going to have to begin to change because people now have brushes. They like to have makeup last all day, and they hate having little foam applicators fall out of their compacts. And they probably have, extra more than one compact at home, so they could have a travel one and a not travel one. And so it's a different world. So the brands are going to have to evolve. But for right now, if you ever wondered why those little foam applicators, there's 2 of them because that means there's 4 sides and there's 4 colors. So you can have one side for each of your colors. So in case you were ever wondering, there you go. All right, this is M is for. Hope no one panicked that we were talking about money, and that you still love your luxury cosmetics. Anytime I ever need some luxury therapy, I just turn on Michelle Wong and just love it. So anyway, hope you are having a fantastic day, that you were not starving to buy Chanel, and we'll see you in the next video for more fun, and you won't have to have any emotional support, anything, hopefully. So, all right, we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.